Good morning, Praetorians. It is Tuesday, January 20th. I just wanted to do another video update here. We have our newest pledgers, Clays Frederick Hornehaver, Martin Hines, Jonathan Jixman, and Jorn Evers. Just want to say congratulations, guys. You're the last ones to get in before we ended our little 3-day initial promo. All of you guys and everybody before that has got the +1 automatically to your account level. So congratulations on that, and I hope you enjoy all of the rewards that will be coming with those special bonuses. Just to kind of start out today, I got a bunch of questions last night, which is quite cool. I'm going to answer some of them. One of them is specifically so long I'm going to have to make a podcast specifically about it to answer it properly. So, but before I do that, I wanted to point out that it was quite exciting last night to see that we hit up to number 2 on the kick track for video games and number 4 overall for all Kickstarter projects. So that's quite cool. Obviously, the statistics relating to the game and its success are looking very, very positive at this point. I know that there's a whole lot of resources that we haven't even tapped quite yet. We still don't have the real media coverage, and hopefully within the next week or two we can kind of get on some of these gaming websites and magazines and so on, and that might be a really, really, really big push far beyond our initial asking price. So we're still quite hopeful, and everything's looking good. But to quickly touch base on a few different things, let's see here. Okay, questions that I got. I truncated these questions because they were kind of long. So essentially, what I see here, what I'm going to start with is warp gates and how will civilizations be able to control them. I touched on them kind of briefly yesterday, and basically because of the scale of the universe, warp gates are going to allow players, as I said, to quickly get around within their own empires and alliances, and they will, like I said, have the IFF broadcasting system built into it so that members of the alliance, members of the whatever, the empire, can make use of those warp gates to quickly get around within the empire, but an enemy force won't be able to use your warp gates against you. It's kind of like the trade-off there. And the way we envision this, like I had mentioned, is not exactly like, but very similar to like how it was in Cowboy Bebop, kind of like almost like a stellar an interstellar highway, if you would. Essentially, a ship would, pull up into the loading region, choose its destination within all of the possible linked warp gates, and then it would, make them travel there very, very, very quickly to cut down on the amount of time people who are, trying to get things done will have to spend going from one planet to another. Because, if you look at, under a realistic principle, we don't want the game to drag in areas where it doesn't need to. We don't want it to be slow-paced just for the sake of being massive. So this is one of those systems where it'll be a relatively cheap technology. There will be different advancements that will be unlocked down that tech tree to improve and alter how the warp gates function. At its simplest, it's literally a point-to-point, and at its most complex, it's like an interstellar highway, with all kinds of fast-traveling destinations. Now, the question was, can you, how will the Empire control the various fees and permissions relating to that? And to answer that question, I just wanted to point this out, that because we're going with this horizontal progression system, we'll be able to keep adding more and more and more to the game without overpowering or underpowering or trivializing any of the content, which is one of the key ideas behind our design philosophy. At the starting point, it's very likely that it'll be just a permission yes no. Either you process, you meet the requirements for the identification and therefore can utilize the system. If we have enough budget, we'll probably put in a slightly more advanced system, which will allow players to actually charge a fee when someone uses the gate. So, like, if you have like an Empire currency you've created and they have, the currency available, that they'll be able to um, go into the gate, choose their destination, and it'll automatically deduct from their galactic or their Empire credit card, if you would. So, the goal is to allow players to choose how their warp gate system works, whether it's literally just anyone who meets the identification can utilize it for free, or whether it charges per use or based on distance or destination. Some destinations might cost more than other destinations. That is something we have planned, but I don't want to promise that we're going to have every last element of that done, because there's a lot of systems that we want to make sure have enough refinement to really make the game as next generation and unlike anything else as possible. So some of these systems may start out a little bit simpler, and then as time progresses, we'll keep adding more and more features. Our goal overall with the series is to give players, or to empower players to choose their own game, to literally make this as exactly the way they see a universe operating as possible. Whether they want a Star Wars universe and they end up creating that kind of, conflict-oriented gangsters and slavery and bounty hunters and mercenaries, or with the Galactic Republic and that kind of thing, or they want something more like the the peace-loving Federation kind of concept, or all down any mixture of different elements on that side of things. So it's a good question. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Is it'll start simpler and it'll just keep getting more and more refined. All of the systems. Ideally, we would like to have essentially a team of people that focuses on each of the various sections of the game, and they develop exclusively for particular departments or specific sides of the game process. That way we have less overlapping and conflicting code type situations. So hopefully we do really well and can afford to put the individual teams into their respective categories. The next question was voice recorded IFF signals. And this, I'm going to go back to what I said before. That's going to be a maybe. It's absolutely, you're going to be able to type in a message when you set up your IFF signal, and it'll probably have some kind of garbled mechanical sounding, something like the Imperial probe droid kind of message broadcast and then present like a text box. That's probably how it'll be at the get-go. As technology moves forward and as bandwidth moves forward and so on and so forth, there's a very real possibility that we will allow people to use things like their own custom uploaded objects, be it a sound object or an image object or whatever. But also when we go into the category of allowing people to upload stuff, it creates a problem for us in that it opens a doorway for people to upload copyrighted and protected media. And unless we can really afford to handle all of the repercussions of that from a legal standpoint, I don't want to get us wrapped up in a lot of litigation by opening that can of worms, especially not off the bat. Like I said, if you take, like, for example, a game like Second Life, you can kind of compare our game in a way to something like Second Life on the principle that it's very player content created. But the difference here is their system is very sluggish. If you've ever played the game, it's very, very slow to play, because the assets themselves are being uploaded by the players. So every time a new player goes to a new area or sees a new person, they have to download the assets that are linked to that particular object or character, whether it's a sound or it's a texture or whatever. With the system that we're using a procedural generation process, which will essentially be a mathematical equation rather than a ton of images and so on and so forth. So the end result is that the players will download the game and all of the data and install it like a normal MMO would be done. And then all of the assets that are required for the player to get and feed back into the world will already be on their system. There won't be like, oh, well, I just went into a new area, so I have to download all these new textures and I have to download all this stuff. It'll be a packet of data that basically says, hey, run this algorithm through, or run the set of values through the procedural generation algorithm, and like like that, you've got your object, rather than creating this laggy mess. And that's one of the things that, like I said, I mean, someday in the future, I mean, we plan on working on this game for a long time. We could be talking 10 years out, and we're still pumping, keeping this game every bit as fresh and up to date as any other game that's released that year. That's our goal with this. So I'm not going to say it'll never happen, letting people upload their own sound files and so on and so forth, but don't look for that kind of feature at the get-go. It's a whole can of worms that it creates problems for us on a legal standpoint, and it's a networking nightmare to manage synchronizing assets on that principle of uploaded, downloaded kind of deal. So, just so you understand that this will not turn into that kind of a laggy mess as a result of this decision. Second Life is a laggy mess. For all of its cool toys, the end result is a mess. You can't have real-time combat in a system where characters are floating around and they're still downloading and they're hitting rubber banding and weird stuff like that. And that's because people are actually uploading assets to that system. So, it's a twofold benefit. One, keeps us out of legal litigation, and two, it keeps everything streamlined and very, based on the generators and, and so on and so forth. So that the creation tools can be very robust, but very real time as well. So that's the answer to that question. Maybe someday in the future when technology catches up and we can actually say, hey, look, it's real time and people are uploading stuff, and we can afford, if someone tries to sue us, to handle it. But for the beginning, probably not going to be seeing anything in that respect for a very long time. The next question was, how will slavery work in the game? And I'm just going to say, this is linked to AI. The fact that every character, every creature in the game, be it a sentient being or an animal, has AI in it. And as a result of this, civilizations will be able to be literally enslaved, okay? Because they can't just like log off and vanish out of the universe. I really need to spend a long time on this question, and I don't want to take up all of today's time on it right now, so I'll get into this one probably in my next podcast, but I will just say it is because of the way the AI system works. It is because of the fact that things live and die. It's very linked in with those systems, and it'll operate under an individual all the way up to massive civilization. So I'll just leave it at that for that question for now. The next question was, if you started as a privateer, can you change your mind later and create an empire? And the answer is yes. This is actually what I really wanted to talk about, because this is linked to the account system. And basically, in this game, because players will have the ability to literally kill each other's empires, so you have an empire going today and everything's going great, and then all of a sudden you get attacked and boom, your empire is gone. If we did not have a way for players to store their advancement, and as a result have a way to start over somewhere else in the universe, very close to where they were, we would be discouraging long-time gaming. It would only be for the absolute most hardcore gamers. And we want this game to be more accessible than just that level, but we still want everything to matter. So this is linked to that account system score type concept. So to answer this question, I have to kind of talk about the account system for a little bit, and that's fine because I've been wanting to do this anyway. It's just a matter of finding the right place and the right time. So here it is. So the way the account system score is going to work is based on what players actually do. It's not like something you're going to have to consciously think about when you're playing the game. And the best way to sum it up is, if you think about a lot of games that have these things called achievements in them. It'll be a similar type concept as achievements. For example, how many things have you killed? How far have you traveled from your original home world? How many new discoveries have you made? And so on and so forth. Planets have you visited? There's just lots of little metrics-oriented things that will be linked to this account score. And the bigger your account score is, the better your starting point will be if you end up losing everything and have to start over. So essentially, if you've been playing the game for, like, let's say a year, and you created something and then you die, or all your family dynasty and everything gets wiped out, whether it's an empire or soul, privateer, whatever, when you start over, you'll essentially be starting over at a much farther point than you initially did the first time you created your character and your account and your empire, whatever. It'd be like, almost starting right back where you were as far as what you have, just you'd have to pick a new family dynasty name, or, like if you're a member, let's say like you're a member of a species in an empire, and you specifically, your particular family dynasty is on like planet A, and planet A gets wiped out and you lose everybody, but the empire still exists. And you'll be able to restart within that empire as a new family, basically. Okay, so you'll be added to the empire, and like I said, it's because it's account linked and so on and so forth. You'll be able to, you'll literally be a new entity, a new set of entities within that same archetype that you started with, the same environment. If your entire civilization gets wiped out, then, like I said, you can move your whole guild to the other side of the universe somewhere, a different position, what we would call the undiscovered territories, and it's like, at the start of the game, things will be kind of like, even though they're going to be spread out in terms of like the bubbles, as I was talking about yesterday, there will be like a cluster, if you would. Things will be kind of clustered together, and that'll end up being what we call the core universe in a way. And the reward for success will be essentially controlling that core universe area. And when people join later in the game, they'll start on the outskirts of that core area, and if people get wiped out, they will be moved to the outskirts. So if you want to end up getting back to, you could essentially, theoretically, you could lose your empire, go to the outskirts, and then fight your way back and retake your homeworld. So it's just going to be a different empire name, a different, civilization, in terms of, this was the history of this civilization. This civilization has a different history, but they've now gone and reclaimed their spiritual ancestry. So that kind of fun stuff will be possible in that. But to get to directly to how the question was asked is, if you start a privateer, can you change your mind later and create an empire? And that is, the answer is yes. I mean, the process you're going to go through when creating an empire at the beginning of the game, you're going to get a lot of like specific bonuses. Essentially, points have a weight to them based on where you spend it. If you're spending it on species creation and empire creation, you get a bigger value, we'll say, a bigger effect for each point. And if you start as a privateer, because obviously you're putting all of your points into an individual rather than a group of individuals, you'll have like essentially what we call a heroic unit, or several heroic units, which just have above average stats, above average bravery. They're a little bit tougher than the average, and every family will have at least one heroic unit in it, no matter what, at all times. And if that heroic unit dies, that was another question I got yesterday, is what happens if you die? If that heroic unit dies, then you'll be able to assign the heroic status to another one of your family dynasty members. It could be a child, it could be a sibling, it could be whatever. So it could be someone that's under your sphere of influence, and you want to make that become essentially your main. And that's kind of how the system works, is you'll still have your hero within your family dynasty, or several heroes, depending on how you spend your points. But the hero label will move when a hero dies. So you're not like, oh no, my hero died and now I'm stuck with lesser characters. You'll always have at least one hero. You'll get to pick which hero, or which of your controlled AIs that is within your sphere of influence, it becomes your next hero in line. So it's a system, like I said, it tries to take into consideration the risk reward, the concept of being able to live and die, but doesn't like go to such a level to where it's literally punishing the player. Because in most games that have permadeath, if you die, you're gone. That's it. You're literally rolling a new alt and you're leveling up again. But in our game, we don't have leveling, so we had to devise a different system for how, because it's oriented very differently in how civilizations advance and tech trees and mutations and so on and so forth. So I hope that kind of answers the question from yesterday about what happens when you die. But if you start as a privateer, and let's say you're playing through the game, and you suddenly say, "Hey, I want to make an empire." Not I want to join an empire, but I want to make my own. And you'll have to do it through using in-game systems, meaning essentially you will have tools through the organization management. When you create an organization, the primary an empire is in essence a particular kind of organization, and at any point in time, players will have access to creating these organizations. And if they want to create an empire type organization, that's their choice. The difference is they would need to fill that empire up with actual NPCs that they have control over, or to co-create an empire with a friend, which they'll, like I said, in the organization tools, you'll be able to add players and they'll confirm their addition to the empire or to the organization. So players will be able to, at any point in the game, cooperatively create these organizations, be it an empire organization or a civilian organization or a military organization or whatever it is they want to do. That is how that'll work. And one of the things that the organization, I pointed this out at a couple points, but I wanted to kind of just spend a little more time on it. The organization system, essentially, it's the best way to put it is it's labels with permissions, and ranks are basically labels with permissions. Departments are labels with the permissions. So we're going to give players a very fluid, free-form way of linking together various attributes and allowing them to really create their own governing forms, their own departmentalization, their own ranks, and how they want those things to operate. Because each organization, regardless of whether it's an empire or a civilian or whatever, has its own internal rank structure, it essentially makes it like a micro version of the big empire thing. It's like essentially it's the same thing, but it's compartmentalized as far as how far up the chain it is. And like I said, you can create any organization for any purpose. It's literally as an empire. So you can say, oh, well, I want to create this organization. It's going to be an empire organization. All that does is allows you to put other players' organizations inside of your organization as their own self-contained entity. So it's like, if you think about it, it's like linking together nodes rather than, like a preset governing form that you'll find in a lot of games, where you're just choosing a predetermined rank and structure system. So I hope that kind of answers the question of whether a privateer can change their mind. Absolutely. At any point in time, they can say, hey, I'm tired of being on my own. I want to group up with some people, create an empire, and go to town. The difference being is rather than getting these multiplier bonuses from the starting point of the game, they will end up getting a what do you call it? They'll end up having to actually utilize the resources that they have go at that particular point in time. So it works a little bit differently, but the possibility is absolutely there. Last question that I got. Boy, I could use some coffee. All right. The last question I got was, how will resupplying work? And to try and break this down as simply as possible. No, I'm sorry, this is not the last question. I skipped the question. Ooh, I scrolled down too far. How about that? I skipped the question I thought was the most fun. I'm going to go to the most fun question first. No, actually, I'll do this and then I'll go save that one for last. All right. How will resupplying work? Basically, Resupplying will be one part setup and one part automated process. Like, for example, soldiers will resupply vehicles, bases, and portable resupply objects, which can be deployed in the office, or in the game world. For example, um, if you ever played a first-person shooter, where you had like, a character that could drop an ammo pack and other characters could pick it up. Um, Vehicles will have resupplying options where when a character is nearby, they can access it and it'll fill it up. Like, we can't make every last element at this point in time. Maybe at some point in the future we'll make it to where it's like virtual reality level of you have to actually grab the thing and put it in your pocket and so on. But for the sake of not overly complexifying, if that's even a word, the process, there'll still be some invisible, you activate and it does its job type situation. So you get nearby something, you use it, and it fills you back up, whether it's ammo or whatever. The way soldiers will be is pretty simple. Like I said, there will be vehicles which will be deployable, that will be resupply vehicles. There will be packs which can be deployed and actually carried around, like an ammo bag kind of concept. When it comes to vehicles are almost the exact same idea, but operate on a little bit different concept. Vehicles will, and we're talking like spaceships, for example, they'll have to get nearby each other, and the type of animation you would see would be like little resupply vehicles going back and forth between the two vehicles, moving the supplies from one point to the other. I'm not sure if we really want to go into like teleportation, your beam me over Scotty kind of deal. It's on the table. It's not something we've said no to. It's just a matter of whether we really want to go that route. So that may be like high up on a tech tree, for example, to actually just have two ships be nearby each other and beaming supplies back and forth rather than sending ships back and forth. But the bigger ships, the resupply ships, will actually be resupplying from bases. So take, for example, like a space station, or some kind of a colony where they would, go into orbit, send down landing vehicles. Landing vehicles would pick up supplies and bring it back up to the ship. And that ship would deploy out to, for example, a war front, and send its little vessels to the various bigger vessels to deliver the supplies. Littler ships will actually resupply inside of, for example, a carrier or a mothership kind of deal. So depending on what point you are in what scale, what size of object, the resupplying will operate differently. So little ships will actually land to resupply and then redeploy, whereas the bigger vessels will have these kinds of ways of sending things back and forth. Now, the other part of the question was, is it going to be automated, or is it going to be something you have to manually micromanage? And the reality is the AI will know it needs to resupply, and because of the way the logic system works, a vehicle which has the supplies will be identified to the AI. So the AI will know that this is a resupply vehicle, and it'll go to its appropriate resupply vehicle when it needs to. However, this will be modified by orders. So if a unit has orders to attack essentially until it dies, until it runs out of energy or whatever, it'll keep on that concept. Some, because of the morale, because of the AI, some may disobey orders and book it and head back when they're not supposed to, because each AI will be a little bit different. So you won't have like all units acting identical. They'll almost be like individual. They'll be individuals based on their birth sign, their morale, their alignment, and so on. These different AI categories, factors that will determine how well they stick to orders, how well they execute the orders, if they chicken out and run from a fight, or whether they stay until have that extreme bravery and fear no death kind of deal. So like I said, it is an automated process in general. The AI itself will handle resupplying. You can give an order to recall all units and say, hey, everybody come back and resupply, or group, Squadron A resupply, and then after they're done, Squadron B resupply, and they'll run through their routine as efficiently as they can. Now, the really fun question that I got, which actually was the first question, which was scrolled up too far for me to see, was, will there be grappling hooks, harpoons, tractor beams, and repulsor rays? And I'll actually read the question the way it was asked, because I didn't want to read all of them. They were all pretty long questions, but this was interesting. Can I tow this space station towards the planet? Sorry, I started in the middle here. It says, while watching one of your videos, I saw a space station above a planet. All of your assets look stunning. My first thought was, can I tow the space station towards the planet? That is to have 5, 10, 20, 30 ships attaching grappling cables and throw the station to the planet, causing catastrophic damage. The answer is yes, actually. There will be different types of technology that will be used, be it grappling hooks and harpoons, tractor beams, and the repulsor rays. If you look at, like, for example, a space pirates type situation, if you blow up the ship, you lose your bounty. So for a space pirate type thing to work, you really need to enable players to trap ships. There will be lots of different kinds of technology to do this, like gravity weapons and gravity nets, as for like from Farscape, one of my favorite TV shows of all time. From, for example, Firefly or Serenity, with the grappling hooks onto launching harpoons into the ship and then pulling them in and attaching themselves to the hull. And then boarding the vessel and fighting through the interior of the vessel and stealing either the vessel or killing everyone inside, maybe capturing slaves, whatever. There'll be all different levels of tech, different paths to reach this type of concept. But like I said, the answer is absolutely yes. The space station part, I don't say that that's going to be easy to push a space station out of orbit and into the planet's surface, but in all reality, it will be possible. It's going to take a massive amount of power. Essentially, it's going to take an equal amount of power to move the object. Space is an interesting thing because it is a vacuum, and I'm sure Frank will be the one to handle the specifics of this system, as in what would actually be required to make Ship A be capable of moving a massive space station. I'm gonna say he's like a walking encyclopedia. Anytime you need to know about how something works, you just like, hey Frank, you know how blah 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 technology works? And he's like, yeah, here's how it works. So but yeah, that's absolutely going to be one of the possibilities there. So anyway, I just wanted to touch up on a few of these questions today. I'm going to cut this one off here at around 30 minutes. And just say, one last shout out to our newest contributors. That was Joran Evers, Jonathan Jixman, Klaus Frederick Hornover, and Martin Heims. And congratulations and thank you guys for your backing and support. We appreciate it, and we got a lot more fun stuff. I've got some things I'm going to be working on today, and I don't know exactly when I'm going to have it online, but I'm kind of leery about putting pure concept artwork up, but seeing as I'm the only artist actually working on the team, I'm probably just going to have to bite the bullet and put some concept artwork up that's not really to my standard of perfection. I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I think it's more or less right now painting the image in your head of where we're going than trying to just make sure every asset is exactly the way it'll be on game day. It's all pre-early release, and I think you guys realize that. So be looking for some cool updates, and until next time, this is Alaric with Invisionary signing off.